In the summer of 1944, as Allied armies pushed inland from the Normandy beaches, a quiet war unfolded far beyond the front lines, one fought in the shadows by small, unassuming teams dropped into enemy territory under the cover of night. Few people today realize that these three-man cells, known collectively as the Jedburgh teams, were some of the earliest joint special operations units in modern military history. Their mission was deceptively simple: link up with scattered French resistance groups, coordinate sabotage, and guide the uprisings that would cripple German responses to the Allied advance. But behind this simplicity lay a labyrinth of secrecy, conflicting loyalties, and intelligence leaks that even now raise questions historians struggle to answer. For many Jedburgh operatives, the struggle began before they ever touched French soil. Comprised of American OSS officers, British SOE agents, and specially trained French or Dutch operatives, each team had to undergo intense training at Milton Hall and other secret facilities across England. They learned demolitions, radio signaling, night navigation, silent killing techniques, and, perhaps most difficult, how to trust each other. Captain Frank Wig Wisner later wrote in his notes that the greatest challenge was not the Germans but the uncertainty of whom one could truly rely upon. French resistance networks, fractured by occupation, were riddled with informants and rival political factions. A single compromised contact could doom an entire team within hours. On the night of June 12, 1944, Team James, one of more than 90 Jedburgh teams eventually deployed, was dropped into the countryside north of Limoges. Their aircraft, a C-47 from the 9th Troop Carrier Command, flew low to avoid German radar. The men jumped with nothing more than Sten guns, small blocks of plastic explosive, medical kits, and a Type 3 Mark II radio sealed in a cylindrical canister. Within minutes of landing, they realized they were not alone. Resistance fighters approached cautiously from the tree line, whispering passwords in the pale moonlight. But according to the team's post-operation report, 3 unknown men trailed behind the group, men who disappeared before dawn and were never identified. The deeper they moved into occupied France, the more complex their mission became. German security units, the Geheime Feldpolizei and the dreaded SD, had intensified anti-resistance operations after the Normandy landings. Villages suspected of supporting the Maquis were burned, hostages were executed. Still, the Jedburgh teams pressed forward. They organized supply drops from the RAF Special Duty Squadron, blew up rail lines near the Paris-Orleans corridor, and relayed intelligence on German troop movements back to London. Every message sent from their portable radios carried a risk of detection by German direction-finding teams. One operator wrote in his diary, "Each transmission felt like a gamble with my life. I counted the seconds, praying they couldn't triangulate quickly enough." Yet several missions encountered troubling irregularities. Team Jacob, deployed near Dijon, reported that German patrols appeared to know their movements in advance, closing in on rendezvous sites scheduled only hours before. Team Daniel vanished entirely in late June, its members never recovered, its final transmission abruptly cut off mid-sentence. The official explanation attributed the loss to German interception of radio traffic, but some OSS officers suspected infiltration inside the resistance networks. One memo from July 1944, declassified decades later, notes, "Pattern indicates potential betrayal from within. Recommend reassessment of local contacts." Despite these dangers, the Jedburgh missions proved vital to the broader Allied strategy. Their coordination with resistance groups delayed German armored divisions attempting to reinforce Normandy. Sabotage teams derailed trains carrying the 2nd SS Panzer Division Das Reich, slowing its march northward. Bridges were destroyed, telephone lines severed, and supply depots burned, all contributing to the mounting pressure on German logistics. General Dwight D. Eisenhower later acknowledged that coordinated resistance activity shortened the war by weeks, though he stopped short of detailing the clandestine operations behind it. Historians now view the Jedburgh teams as precursors to modern special forces, yet their records remain fragmented. Some mission files were destroyed during the chaotic post-war downsizing of the OSS. Others were heavily redacted to protect local collaborators who survived the occupation. And a few reports contain references, still unexplained, to missing liaisons, unaccounted informants, and coded messages that never received replies. Even today, researchers studying German counterintelligence archives find occasional mentions of Allied agents captured in rural sectors, but the identities rarely match known Jedburgh rosters. The legacy of these teams lies not only in what they accomplished but also in what remains unresolved. Their bravery reshaped the role of clandestine warfare, demonstrating the power of small units operating deep behind enemy lines. But the obscure disappearances, the unverified betrayals, and the rapid, sometimes inexplicable German reactions leave open questions that give the program an enduring aura of mystery. And as the Allies pushed deeper into France, new missions awaited, some even more dangerous, involving nuclear intelligence, high-stakes interrogations, and covert scientific hunts that unfolded behind collapsing German fronts. The OSS was about to enter a new phase of secrecy, one where the line between battlefield and espionage blurred even further. In the final months of 1943, while most Allied planning remained focused on the coming invasion of Western Europe, a different kind of mission quietly took shape inside the Office of Strategic Services. Few people outside a small circle in Washington and London knew of its existence. Fewer still understood its stakes. This was Operation Alsos, an unprecedented fusion of intelligence work, scientific investigation, and frontline maneuver designed to answer one urgent question. How close was Nazi Germany to building an atomic weapon? The answer could alter the fate of the entire war, yet every clue was buried behind layers of secrecy, abandoned laboratories, and a scientific community that had learned how to disappear under pressure. The struggle began in Italy. As Allied units advanced northward through the Apennines in late 1943, General Leslie Groves, the chief architect of the Manhattan Project, pushed the OSS to recover any trace of German nuclear research. Many commanders viewed it as an odd request. The front was fluid, German counterattacks fierce, and the prospect of scientists hiding in small Italian hill towns seemed remote. But the Alsos teams, composed of OSS operatives, military intelligence officers, and physicists such as Samuel Gaudsmit, understood that scraps of data, an abandoned notebook, a shipment invoice, a damaged Geiger counter, could provide insight into the enemy's ambitions. Every minute mattered. In November, as the U.S. Fifth Army fought its way toward Rome, Colonel Boris Pash and his unit entered Naples under heavy rain and sporadic shelling. One officer later recalled that the city smelled of smoke, sewage, and something sharp, fear perhaps. What they found inside the University of Naples stunned them. Stripped laboratories, shattered instrumentation, and empty filing cabinets. Someone had removed nearly all physics documents before the Allies arrived. A local technician, interrogated over a gas lamp in a cramped basement office, claimed that German officers had escorted several scientists north only days earlier. His words matched other reports coming from retreating German columns. A pattern was emerging, someone was sanitizing research sites with methodical precision. Context was everything. Since 1939, leading German researchers such as Werner Heisenberg and Kurt Diebner had worked on what was known as the Uranverein, the Uranium Club. Allied intelligence was desperate to determine whether their efforts had progressed beyond theory. "We cannot afford to assume anything," Groves warned in a classified message. "If the Germans gain a lead, it may be irreversible." His caution carried weight. All that separated Europe from a nuclear-armed Reich were hard facts, and the Alsos teams were the only ones capable of obtaining them. The deeper they pressed into Italy, the more unsettling the clues became. At a villa outside Florence, the team uncovered fragments of uranium oxide stored in a crate labeled only with a coded delivery number. No logs, no shipping receipts, no laboratory tags, just a destination code that investigators could not match to any known facility. In another town, an abandoned safe contained half-burned letters discussing heavy water procurement. The documents abruptly stopped mid-sentence, as if the writer had been interrupted. Decades later, analysts would attempt to piece together these leads, but the gaps remain impossible to fill completely. The reveal came in early 1944, when Alsos intelligence reached a turning point. Acting on signals intercepts and local testimony, the team crossed into southern France alongside the U.S. 7th Army during Operation Dragoon. Their objective: locate Frédéric Joliot-Curie's laboratory in Paris before German forces could destroy or loot it. But they were too late. When they arrived in August, the facility's most sensitive equipment had vanished, removed during a brief and chaotic German withdrawal. "It was like chasing ghosts," Gaudsmit wrote. "Every step forward gave us 3 new questions." Still, the mission evolved rapidly. As Allied forces pushed into Alsace-Lorraine later that fall, Alsos teams raced alongside frontline battalions, sometimes arriving at towns mere hours after firefights ended. In Strasbourg, they searched the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute's branches, uncovering the first solid evidence that German progress toward a nuclear bomb had been far slower than feared. Papers were scattered across the floor, equations scribbled on half-torn sheets, reactor sketches incomplete, test data inconclusive. The relief within the team was palpable. Yet something else remained troubling. References to unnamed scientists who had been relocated east months earlier, to unknown destinations under special SS authority. What became of those researchers is still partly unclear. Some resurfaced after the war, quietly re-entering academic life with little explanation for their wartime assignments. Others never reappeared in any Allied database. Even Soviet archives, opened briefly in the 1990s, offered only partial hints, transfer orders, prisoner lists, fragments of interrogation notes. Looking back, Operation ALSOS offers modern observers a powerful lesson in the fog of intelligence work. Facts come piecemeal. Motives blur. Scientific evidence can be destroyed faster than it can be collected. And sometimes the truth is spread across battlefields, buried in rubble or erased by retreating armies. Yet the mission was far from over. As 1945 approached, the hunt would shift into Germany itself, into the heart of a collapsing regime, where the race for knowledge would collide with the chaos of total war. And the next OSS mission would not end in relief. It would end in tragedy, with an entire team vanishing behind enemy lines. In the early spring of 1944, when Allied strategists were refining every detail of the upcoming invasion of Western Europe, a lesser-known OSS operation quietly took shape in the shadows. Unlike the broad, carefully coordinated plans for D-Day, this mission, Operation Ginny 2, was narrow, surgical, and perilously ambitious. Its objective was to destroy the crucial rail tunnel at Fermura on Italy's Ligurian coast, a strategic artery used by the German 135th Fortress Brigade to move troops and equipment between La Spezia and the Western Front. Yet what makes Ginny 2 so haunting is not merely its failure, but the mystifying speed and precision with which the Germans reacted. Even today, historians debate how the enemy discovered the team's presence so quickly. The struggle for the operatives began the moment they left their staging point, an OSS base at Bastia in Allied-controlled Corsica. Commanded by Lieutenant Vincent Russo, the team of 15 men, most Italian-Americans fluent in local dialects, had trained for months in demolitions, mountain infiltration, and maritime navigation. Their equipment was simple but sufficient: plastic explosives, pencil detonators, Fairbairn Sykes fighting knives, silenced .45 pistols, and a compact radio for extraction signals. The objective was straightforward: land by rubber boat under cover of darkness, hike through the terrace-lined hills, sneak past German sentries, and destroy the railway tunnel. But the first attempt, Ginny I, failed when rough seas forced them back to Corsica. Ginny II, the operation recorded in OSS archives with chilling brevity, was their second try. On the night of March 22, 1944, two PT boats from the U.S. Navy approached the Italian coastline. The sea was deceptively calm. The moon had dipped behind a thick marine haze. Everything seemed in their favor as the team paddled silently toward shore. Insight into what happened next comes from the diary of Seaman Joe Nito, recovered after the war and declassified decades later. Mountains loomed like black teeth. We heard waves, nothing else. No lights. No voices. It felt wrongly quiet. Russo's team landed on the beach near Fermura just before 0200 hours. But almost immediately they encountered an unexpected problem: navigation errors caused by misread terrain features in the dark. Instead of being dropped at the planned infiltration point near Bonacilla, they were over 2 miles north, close to a small German observation post the planners had believed inactive. This navigational mistake set the stage for the mission's unraveling. By dawn, the team had not yet reached their demolition point. They were still miles from the tunnel, moving along steep and unfamiliar terrain. Someone from the group spotted a farmhouse where they hoped to gain bearings. According to later German interrogation notes, a local farmer saw the armed men moving across his field. Whether he willingly alerted the Germans or did so under duress is unknown, but within hours the 135th Fortress Brigade was aware of an enemy sabotage unit operating inland. The reveal came swiftly. By early afternoon, while attempting to reorient themselves, the OSS team encountered a German patrol. Accounts suggest the patrol initially believed them to be Italian partisans until an officer noticed their American equipment. The OSS men attempted to scatter into the hillside, but the terrain offered little cover. By 1630 hours, all 15 operatives were captured. Their treatment from that point reveals the harsh legal terrain of covert warfare in World War II. Under the laws of war, commandos operating out of uniform or behind enemy lines risked being classified as saboteurs rather than lawful combatants. Hitler's infamous Kommandobefehl, commando order, issued in October 1942, mandated that all captured commandos be executed immediately, regardless of uniform, rank, or surrender. Still, many German commanders quietly avoided enforcing the order. But not this time. The men were transferred to La Spezia, interrogated, and held overnight. Records suggest the SS questioned them extensively about Allied invasion plans, information none of these lower-ranking operatives possessed. At 1,540 hours on March 26, 1944, all 15 prisoners were marched to a remote quarry and executed by firing squad. Their bodies were left in a shallow trench and not recovered until after the war. And yet, what remains mysterious is how precisely the Germans identified them as OSS operatives so quickly. Later reviews of captured German records revealed unusually detailed descriptions of the men, their equipment, and even their ranks, information that should have been impossible to gather from a brief field encounter. Some post-war analysts suspected that Axis intelligence services had prior knowledge of American activity along the Ligurian coast. Others believed the farmer who reported them recognized their accents and guessed they were Americans. But a few lingering anomalies, such as an Italian military police report noting advance awareness of enemy infiltration, have never been fully explained. The application for the modern observer is sobering. Ginny 2 illustrates how dependent covert warfare is on precision. The exact landing point, the reliability of local contacts, the smallest navigational detail. A single error can unravel an entire mission. When the war ended, surviving OSS leadership made certain the men of Ginny 2 were honored. But privately, some officers questioned how such an operation could have gone awry so completely, and whether the Germans had been waiting for them. The story of covert warfare in Europe did not end here. In the Balkans, another OSS mission, one of rescue rather than sabotage, would unfold with equal danger but far greater success. Still, it too would produce unanswered questions. By the summer of 1944, as German forces began their slow, grinding withdrawal across the Balkans, the skies over Yugoslavia had become one of the most dangerous flight corridors in Europe. American B-24 and B-17 crews from the 15th Air Force, flying out of southern Italy, routinely crossed the rugged mountains of Serbia to strike oil refineries, rail junctions, and industrial sites deep within Axis territory. Many never made it home. Flak, fighters, storms, and mechanical failures forced hundreds of airmen to bail out across remote valleys ruled not by any uniformed army, but by local resistance groups and roving German patrols. Out of this chaos emerged one of the most remarkable rescue missions of the war, Operation Halyard. Unlike previous OSS undertakings, Halyard was not built around sabotage or interrogation. It was built around trust, a rare commodity in wartime Yugoslavia, where rival factions, political rivalries, and German reprisals shaped every decision. The mission began when intelligence reports reached OSS Bari in early 1944. Dozens of downed airmen were being sheltered by Serbian villagers loyal to General Draza Mihailovic and his Chetnik resistance movement. These villagers risked their lives daily. German anti-partisan units like the 7th SS Mountain Division Prinz Eugen conducted brutal sweeps. Any village discovered helping Allied flyers faced execution or destruction. The struggle deepened as OSS leadership weighed the situation. Alliances in Yugoslavia were notoriously complex. The British SOE had shifted support to Tito's partisans, while the Americans maintained contacts with the Chetniks. Halyard, led by OSS officer George Muselin, would require navigating these fragile political currents while operating behind enemy lines. The mission's first priority was simple in wording but nearly impossible in execution. Build an airstrip on a mountaintop village under German occupation pressure, coordinate evacuations, and ensure no intelligence leaks reached Axis ears. On August 2, 1944, Muselin and a small OSS team parachuted into the village of Pranjani. They were greeted not by soldiers, but by exhausted American airmen, some barefoot, some wounded, all surviving on meager rations shared by local families. According to one airman's diary, they treated us as if we were their own sons. Many gave up food they badly needed. The insight into local commitment was extraordinary. Under constant threat, farmers, teachers, and clergy cleared fields, uprooted fences, and flattened uneven soil to create a makeshift runway more than 700 meters long. They worked mostly at night using hand tools and lanterns, all while German patrols scouted nearby valleys. Still, mysterious incidents hinted at the precariousness of their safety. A coded German message intercepted by Allied listening stations in Bari referred to increased illegal air-ground activity near Kakak, close to Pranjani. How the Germans obtained this information remains unclear. Some historians suggest they interpreted unusual resistance movement patterns. Others propose that Axis aircraft had observed the gathering of villagers on ridge lines. The Germans did not pinpoint the exact location, and that small gap in their intelligence would ultimately save hundreds of lives. The reveal came on August 9, just after midnight. Using prearranged recognition signals, a formation of C-47 Dakota transports from the 60th Troop Carrier Group approached Pranjani under complete blackout. As the villagers held torches along the runway edges, the aircraft descended through the mountain mist. In a remarkable feat of precision flying, they landed, loaded dozens of airmen, and took off again, all within 1 hour. Over the following months, additional OSS agents and U.S. Army Air Forces personnel expanded the mission, constructing improved landing grounds in other remote villages. By December 1944, Operation Halyard had evacuated an estimated 432 Allied airmen, one of the largest and most successful rescue operations of the entire war. Yet the mission left behind ambiguities that persist in historical records. Several coded messages sent from the field never reached OSS headquarters, their transmissions lost or possibly intercepted. One airman reported hearing distant bursts of machine gun fire during the second extraction night, though no German patrols were officially recorded in the vicinity. And flight logs from one evacuation sortie remain incomplete, missing fuel data, passenger lists, and even the exact landing time. Whether these gaps reflect the fog of war, hurried documentation, or German probing actions has never been decisively proven. The application for modern intelligence practitioners is profound. Even the most humanitarian operations rely on secrecy, rapid decision-making, and cooperation among groups with conflicting agendas. Operation Halyard succeeded because villagers, resistance fighters, pilots, and OSS agents trusted one another in a landscape where betrayal was often rewarded and loyalty punished. As 1945 approached, the OSS prepared to take its clandestine warfare to yet another unforgiving front. Northward, across the icy mountains and deep fjords of Norway, a new mission unfolded, one that demanded both sabotage and survival against some of the harshest terrain in Europe. But there, too, the official documents leave critical questions unanswered. By early 1945, the European war was entering its final violent phase, but in the far north, the German occupation of Norway remained firm and strategically vital. The Wehrmacht still depended on the rail network linking central Norway to northern bases supporting U-boat operations and industrial sites feeding the remnants of the German war machine. To slow those movements, the Allies needed something both precise and daring, a blow delivered deep inside mountainous terrain the Germans considered secure. It was under these conditions that the OSS prepared one of its last major sabotage missions in Europe, Operation Ripe. Few outside intelligence circles had ever heard of the unit behind it. The 99th Infantry Battalion, separate, composed largely of Norwegian Americans, was created specifically for operations involving the liberation of Norway. Within that battalion, a group of hand-picked men trained at the OSS Congressional Country Club facility in Maryland and later in Scotland, were molded into a specialized airborne sabotage team. They were led by Major William Colby, a quiet, analytical officer who would one day lead the CIA. But in March 1945, Colby was simply a young commander facing the brutal realities of warfare in one of the world's harshest environments. The struggle began with the insertion itself. On March 24th, a formation of B-24 Liberators modified for parachute operations took off from Harrington Airfield in England. Their objective was to drop Colby's team onto the frozen expanse of the Snæsa Mountains, near the vital Nordland railway line. But the mission went wrong almost immediately. Heavy winds carried one aircraft off course, its team and supplies scattered across a frozen plateau miles from the intended drop zone. A second aircraft crashed into a mountainside, killing everyone aboard. The survivors who reached the ground faced a desolate landscape of knee-deep snow, sub-zero temperatures, and howling winds. Insight into their ordeal comes from Colby's after-action report. Movement was possible only with skis. The men suffered frostbite, exhaustion, and hunger. Yet morale remained high, driven by the knowledge that even minor disruptions to German transport could affect operations far to the south. Local Norwegian resistance fighters, members of Milorg, provided essential guidance and shelter, but even they struggled in these conditions. Food was scarce. German patrols were unpredictable. Avalanche danger was constant. Still, the mission pressed forward. On March 30th, the team struck their first target near Tangen Station. They planted explosive charges along the rail line, timing the detonations to destroy not only the track but also key bridge supports. The resulting explosion echoed through the valley, halting German train movements for days. OSS documents note the sabotage caused significant logistical delays. forcing German units to reroute supplies over longer, exposed routes. But this success came with an unexpected complication. Within hours, German counter-sabotage units, believed to be elements of the Ordnungspolizei reinforced by Wehrmacht mountain troops, began sweeping the area with extraordinary precision. The reveal came when Kolbe's team noticed something unsettling. The German patrols seemed to know roughly where they were. Their search patterns were far too tight and systematic for random sweeps, noted one operative. At one point, a German patrol passed within 300 meters of their hideout, scanning the hill with field glasses. How the enemy narrowed the search so quickly remains unclear. One theory is that German signals intelligence had intercepted fragments of OSS radio traffic, though Norwegian terrain made triangulation difficult. Another theory suggests a civilian sighting alerted authorities. A third, more debated explanation involves a German security detachment stationed at a nearby rail junction, rumored to have been tracking resistance movements more closely than Allied intelligence realized. Despite the tightening noose, the team executed additional demolitions. On April 3, they destroyed another section of track near Lurudal, forcing German engineers to devote precious manpower and materials to emergency repairs. Each explosion required long ski treks, precise timing and coordination with scattered supply caches, a logistical ballet carried out in biting cold. But the danger grew with each mission. Kolbe later recalled, "We operated with the constant feeling of being observed. At times it felt as if the mountains themselves carried whispers of our movements." Application for modern observers is clear. Even in successful sabotage operations, intelligence gaps, both Allied and enemy, shaped the tactical landscape. WWII demonstrated how easily a covert mission could be thrown off balance by weather, unforeseen losses, or enemy units possessing capabilities underestimated by planners. By late April, with Germany nearing collapse, the OSS ordered the operation concluded. Extraction was impossible. The men had to exfiltrate on foot and by ski to friendly-held areas, evading patrols along the way. They succeeded, but barely. And when their final reports reached OSS headquarters, certain details stood out. Missing supply containers never recovered, German patrol logs showing movements the OSS could not fully explain, and a curious notation in a local police file about unidentified men on skis spotted days before the first demolition, an account that did not match any known Allied or resistance movement. These unresolved threads only added to the mission's mystique. With Norway in retreating chaos and the Germans' surrender only weeks away, the OSS turned its attention back to Europe's heartland. There, new intelligence reports indicated an enemy on the brink, and a race to uncover secrets before they were lost forever. In the next chapter, the clandestine war neared its conclusion. By the spring of 1945, the once mighty Third Reich was collapsing under the weight of Allied offensives. Cities fell in rapid succession, bridges were blown in retreat, and entire divisions fled toward Bavaria and Austria in hopes of surrendering to Western rather than Soviet forces. Amid this chaos, the OSS faced a final and formidable challenge, securing the last fragments of intelligence, scientific, military, political, before they vanished in the fires of retreat or were swept into Soviet hands. The clandestine war, fought for years in the shadows, was reaching its climax. But unlike earlier missions with clear tactical goals, this final phase was defined by incomplete reports, hurried interrogations, and files that even today remain strangely inconsistent. The hook begins in southwestern Germany, where OSS teams attached to the U.S. 7th Army crossed the Rhine behind armored spearheads. Their objective, known broadly as Operation Safe Haven, and later connected with the remnants of Alsos intelligence work, was to locate key Nazi officials, scientists, and documents before they disappeared. The terrain was chaotic, roads choked with refugees, burned-out trucks, and scattered pockets of SS resistance. The 36th Infantry Division described the region as a moving fog of humanity. 4 OSS officers embedded with frontline troops, every village might contain a hidden laboratory, an abandoned safe, or a courier carrying coded orders. The struggle intensified as American forces advanced into Württemberg and Bavaria. Here, the OSS began unraveling a pattern. German units had been ordered to destroy archives related to secret weapons programs, including rocket development, chemical research, and high-level diplomatic correspondence. But destruction efforts were inconsistent. In one town, OSS investigators found entire rooms filled with charred paper. In another, they discovered trunks of untouched documents simply left behind by fleeing officials. The inconsistency puzzled analysts. A diary entry from OSS officer John Lansdale captured the mood. Some files burned with professional thoroughness, others untouched. Someone was selective. What? And who made the choices? Meanwhile, the search for missing scientists accelerated. Heisenberg and other leading physicists were tracked across scattered alpine towns, often just hours ahead of Soviet pursuit. But several lesser-known researchers connected to uranium enrichment or heavy water production were nowhere to be found. German civilians offered conflicting accounts. Some claimed SS units had transported the scientists east. Others insisted they had fled into the mountains. A few said they had seen groups escorted by officers of the Sicherheitsdienst, the SD, moving at night toward unknown destinations. The reveal came when OSS teams reached Hagerloch, a small town nestled between forested hills. In a beer cellar beneath the local church, they found the partially dismantled German nuclear reactor, graphite blocks, heavy water flasks, notebooks, and strange metal wiring. The discovery confirmed what also scientists had long suspected. Germany was nowhere near producing a functional atomic weapon. Yet the reactor's condition raised new questions. The logs were incomplete. Several critical instruments were missing. A local official claimed the SS had removed items only days earlier, though he could not say where they had been taken. Some materials were later recovered scattered across various towns. Others, most notably several vials of enriched uranium, were never found. This atmosphere of incomplete answers also extended to OSS field teams. Some units reported discovering safe houses with signs of sudden evacuation, half-eaten food, warm stoves, coded messages left behind in fireplaces. Others encountered deserted checkpoints with German markings hastily removed or painted over. One OSS officer described it as walking through the ghost of an intelligence network, as though enemy operatives had dissolved into the landscape. The application of these experiences resonates even in modern intelligence work. Victory on the battlefield does not automatically yield clarity. In fact, the closer the Allies came to final victory, the more opaque certain aspects of the German intelligence apparatus became. Records were destroyed selectively. Scientists disappeared temporarily before resurfacing in unexpected places. Some German officials surrendered with extensive documentation. Others arrived with empty briefcases and vague explanations. And then there were the missing OSS mission files themselves. In the immediate post-war period, several after-action reports from teams operating in southern Germany and Austria were marked incomplete or not received. Some were later reconstructed from memory, others vanished into bureaucratic gaps. Fragmented references appear in declassified indexes, mentions of lost equipment that was never located, of unnamed informants who stopped reporting during the chaotic final weeks, of German units that moved in strangely coordinated patterns inconsistent with their collapsing command structure. Historians still debate whether these anomalies reflect wartime confusion or something more organized. As May 1945 approached, the OSS shifted from high-risk field operations to gathering testimonies from captured officials. In dilapidated hotels, requisition villas, and makeshift interrogation rooms, OSS officers conducted interviews that would shape historical understanding for decades. Some prisoners spoke freely, eager to distance themselves from the regime. Others gave evasive answers or claimed ignorance. A few hinted at operations the Americans have not yet heard of, but when pressed, offered nothing concrete. Whether these were attempts at bargaining, misdirection, or cryptic allusions to still unrecovered documents remains uncertain. The close of this final chapter is not a dramatic battlefield climax, but rather a somber acknowledgement. The clandestine war ended not with clean conclusions, but with unanswered questions. The OSS missions that shaped the conflict left a record both heroic and incomplete. Their successes, Jedburgh coordination, Alsos discoveries, daring rescue operations, sabotage in the Arctic North, are undeniable. Yet the gaps in documentation, sudden disappearances, and selective destruction of evidence leave historians with a mosaic missing several essential pieces. And perhaps that is the nature of clandestine warfare. For every mission with clear outcomes, there are shadows, unrecovered files, unidentified patrols, missing scientists, unlogged transmissions. The human side of secrecy is shaped as much by what was lost as by what was found. As the OSS disbanded and the CIA emerged from its legacy, one truth remained. The Second World War had left behind secrets that would echo through the decades, not fully resolved but never forgotten.